The story today was about President Obama. He made the decision about General McChrystal and about General Petraeus. You have heard from the president, now the generals. General Stanley McChrystal was on this program last fall for an hour-long conversation. General Petraeus has done many with me over the years, most recently on 2 occasions this spring. We close tonight's program with a look at excerpts from those conversations. Also, we include an excerpt from a September 2009 profile of General McChrystal by David Martin, CBS News' national security correspondent. It was on 60 Minutes. When did you know that this was the right thing for you to do? To be a soldier, to make soldiering a career?
I think you're well into your career before you're sure of it. I think I was probably a company commander before I felt that not only did I find this interesting and challenging, but I felt that it was something that was deeply inside me, and I got a sense of satisfaction from it that it's kind of hard to describe.
Would we have seen that in you when you were at West Point?
I don't think so.
I mean, were you one of the rising stars there that they pointed out and said, this guy's going to be?
I doubt it. I certainly wasn't academically.
Then how do you explain it? What has happened between then and now that makes you the man that the president has put in charge of the most important decision of his presidency?
I think I got to go to teams. One of the things that I reject a little bit is the great man theory. I think that there are important people, but I'm part of a team, and you saw some of them as we came in this morning, and you've read some about the others. I have people that are close friends of mine, some that I've worked with on and off, and we make each other better. Every time we operate in ISAF, it's that team, it's that corporate knowledge. I think that I find it most important to try to get the team I'm working on to believe in a common effort and a common cause. And then it doesn't take a single leader that directs. It takes a group of people who believe moving in the right direction.
What's the responsibility of the leader, though, in terms of, I mean, you lead this rather remarkable disciplined lifestyle. 1 meal a day?
Sure.
You run an hour every day?
Yes, sir.
You sleep 4 or 5 hours a day? Why?
I would sleep more if I had time. I would run more if I had time.
The demands of the job make it?
Yeah. You become committed to a task, and you become committed to each other. And so when I've got my J2, Mike Flynn, works harder than I do, and when I go to bed and I know he's working harder than I do, how do you not work hard? My J3, Bill Mayville, I mean, I see bags under his eyes because he cares. I know he cares about the mission, but I also know he cares about me, and he cares about the others. So how do you not try to carry your part of the load and, in some cases, represent them best or provide what they need?
Tell me about your combat experience. You, as the commander in Afghanistan, what combat has taught you?
Combat has taught me about the people that I'm honored to work with. I have watched young people who probably didn't have a lot of time to think about what they were doing, didn't study a lot of military history, perform as extraordinary heroes just because it was the right thing to do. There's a young Ranger Sergeant who lost part of his arm throwing an enemy hand grenade back at the enemy in a firefight in Afghanistan in, I think it was spring of 2008, and I saw him after that. And just his sense of, I did that because I was with my fire team, and that's what had to happen. There was an older warrant officer who, an extraordinary hero, awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, landed his Little Bird, an H-6 gunship, in daylight under enemy fire to take ammunition off another downed aircraft so he could reload and stay in the fight. When you see those guys, and they've got a lot to lose. They're not 18-year-old kids who think they're bulletproof. These are 40-year-old men in some cases who have kids in high school and college and wives they love, but they're willing to risk that for a cause and for their partners. That's when you can't let up. That's when you have a dedication and responsibility to them that you can't shirk.
When Admiral Mullen tapped you to go to Afghanistan,
Sir.
What were your marching orders?
He didn't give me specific go left, go right. He said build a good team and that he would help as best we could, try to understand the situation and make recommendations.
Has this debate about troop numbers gotten out of perspective in your judgment?
Yeah, I think everybody's become over-focused on the numbers. When I wrote the initial assessment, I said there were a number of things we had to do, but I specifically put in the assessment, but don't focus on numbers of resources. Focus on the change in the strategy, change in approach, long-term commitment. I think the forces that we got are absolutely what we need, the combination of the 30,000 plus what we expect from coalition. But I think that had we not made the other changes and not had the long-term commitment, then putting any forces in would not have been the right answer. But I think we have. And so I don't focus on the number now. I focused on the fact we have absolute clarity of mission and commitment.
President said to you during the review, is 30,000 enough? And you said yes?
We didn't get at that point. I made a series of recommendations at the beginning, the very detailed process. When it got to the end, he said, this is my decision. Are you in agreement with this? And I said, absolutely.
And why did you say that? Simply because he was your commander-in-chief, or because you looked at it and said, if you had not believed you could do the job, you would have said to the commander-in-chief, I can't do the job you expect me to do within the restrictions you're placing on me.
That's my duty, and that's what I would have done.
So in fact, you have said, yes, we can be successful. Yes, 30,000 is enough. Yes, we have the right strategy. Yes, my focus on the Afghan people is the right way to go. And I believe that we will show real progress by the summer of 2010.
That's exactly what I believe.
And that by the summer of 2011, it will look like what?
I think by the summer of 2011, the big difference is we will see the progress earlier through metrics. By the summer of 2011, the people will, the Afghan people will. And to that degree, I hope that the Taliban will also see that as well.
Do you believe they're looking for a reason not to go with the Taliban because they don't like the Taliban?
I absolutely believe that. I think that they would very much prefer to go with their government, but they have to be convinced that the government can protect them.
Everybody comes forward with the history of Afghanistan. And yet in the speech in London, you said, you know, many people are reading that history wrong. How are they reading it wrong?
I think people grab pieces of Afghan history. There's a mythology that there's never been a central government. That's absolutely not true. It's a little different than some other countries, but it's absolutely not true. There's a mythology that Afghans don't consider themselves Afghans with a sense of identity. That's absolutely not true. When I ask an Afghan what they are, they don't say I'm a Pashtun first. They say I'm an Afghan. You have to then ask. There's a sense that no partnership with the Afghan people can be successful here, security-wise, and I just reject that. I think we're already proven that that's not the case.
If you quoted Churchill after the decision was made to the troops.
It's not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end. It's the end of the beginning.
And what did he mean as translated to those troops in Afghanistan?
In my view, I didn't want people to think, here we are just about to do a victory lap. But I do believe that where we are is we have clarity now, better clarity. I think we have better commitment. And I'm talking on the part of the Afghan people, the Afghan government, coalition. So now we are in a position to go forward and win together. And so I believe we're postured, but we still have to do that. The task is before us. It's not behind us.
But it is an inflection point because at least now you have clarity and you have the elements together. So if you don't succeed now, it was never achievable?
I don't go back and try to judge whether it was, but we will succeed now.
Why are you so confident?
I've spent time there. I know the force. I see the enemy. I believe that everyone has looked hard at this now and seen the cost of not succeeding. And so I have confidence that there's an entirely different attitude toward this now, more serious, more committed, yet realistic.
At the end of this year, in December 2010,
with only 6 months to go before we began the exit, 6, 7 months. Tell me what I should expect from you if I'm doing an interview at that time in terms of the metrics that we measure whether this is going well.
Well, there should by then be an expansion of security. So the number of districts that we would assess to have greater security for the population should be increased. Same for lines of communication. Same for the key border crossings on which there will be a focus. So those are the areas, if you will, in terms of the military effort on the ground. Then also, of course, increase in the size and capability and quality of the Afghan National Security Forces over time, and then also progress in the local governance in those areas that have enjoyed greater security.
What's the great risk here?
Well, I think the long pole in the tent here, and I think almost always is the case in a counterinsurgency effort, is the host nation ability to find the leaders who can be the battalion commanders, the brigade commanders, the district governors, the local police chiefs, the members of governmental structures that are all the way from Kabul out to the province and district.
If the president calls you into the Oval Office and says, General, define for me your primary mission, what would you say?
Well, I mean, in a macro sense, it's obviously to advance our interests in the region. We do that obviously in different ways in different countries. We do it in Iraq now by supporting our partners. We're about to transition by the end of August, not only to a substantially smaller force, down from, say, a little under 95,000 now to 50,000, but then a change in mission where we will enable and assist. So that's how we do it there. In Afghanistan, obviously, we're fighting. We certainly have Afghan partners, but we're in the lead in a number of areas, or certainly partnered at the least in various locations. In Pakistan, supporting very much, providing assistance, equipment, funding in some cases, occasionally sharing some information or what have you. So what we're trying to do is what's appropriate in each country, and ideally to enable the country to do it itself rather than for us to do it, so that we're pursuing these security interests wherever it is. In many of these countries, it's building partnerships. It's building their capabilities for the future. It may be through bilateral arrangements that we can then turn into multilateral effects by being an integrator of some of these, say, integrated air and missile defense in the Gulf states on the western side of the Gulf. But that's, I think, broadly, just very broadly, what it is that we do. And we do it, of course, in quite an integrated way, with the diplomats who are in all of the embassies, with the other interagency elements who are active in our area of operations. Because it has to be a comprehensive approach. I've discussed before how countering terrorism can't be done just with counter-terrorist forces. It has to be really a whole of governments with an S on the end approach, a comprehensive approach, so that, yes, certainly counter-terrorist forces are a critical element. They're killing or capturing bad guys who are irreconcilable, and that you can never shrink from that. But you also must get at the reasons why certain populations might be drawn to extremism, why certain areas might be fertile fields for the planting of seeds of extremism and so forth. And that you do by, again, helping other partners, host nations, regional partners, other civilian agencies, diplomats, and all the rest of that.
I once heard you say that part of what happened in Baghdad was not just a surge of troops, it was a surge of ideas.
Well, that's exactly right.
And what's the surge of ideas in Afghanistan?
I think the surge of ideas in Iraq was more important than the surge of forces, because the surge of forces enabled the more rapid application of the focus on securing the population, of living with the people to do that, of promoting reconciliation, and, oh, by the way, being willing to secure those who were willing to oppose al-Qaeda, and then to carry out a host of other activities, all of which, again, complemented. So refurbishing markets, rebuilding schools, fostering, again, local dialogue and reestablishment of local security structures and social organizations. A lot of that applicable in Afghanistan as well. Keeping in mind, again, enormous differences in a whole variety of different ways, the ways of communication there, very different. People don't have satellite dishes on the tops of too many roofs in Afghanistan the way they did in Iraq. They do have radios. There's word of mouth. There's tribal shuras, which have enormous importance, even greater importance than the tribal councils that occasionally were convened in various places in Iraq. But again, at the end of the day, it all comes down to whether the people think they have a brighter future by supporting the Afghan government, the Afghan local officials and so forth, or if they should throw in with the Taliban. And indeed, if they're willing to support the government, and many of them do. Remember, there's no love lost for the Taliban in Afghanistan, as you know. All the polling data still shows the continued resentment of the way they were treated when the Taliban ran that part of the country.
Because of violence and the way they treat women and
indiscriminate
other things.
violence, the closing of, or the destruction of schools for girls, the very oppressive social practices, and really quite an extremist approach in general. But having said that, the government does have to be seen to, again, offer a better future for the people. It has to be seen as legitimate in the eyes of the people, which means it can't be predatory, it can't be corrupt, and it can't be a variety of other things that in some cases has been the fact
That's
of the
exactly
landscape.
the charge against the government, that it's corrupt.
And in many areas, and then President Karzai would be the first to say, in fact, that they must address this, that they must come to grips with it. And I think, again, his appearing at that Shura Council is a very, very important element of this overall approach. He's going to go back down there. And again, there are two key watchwords, and we talked to him about this when Ambassador Holbrooke and I and the ambassador and General McChrystal were in to see him after this civil-military review of concept drill that we did a couple of weekends ago, and discussed the importance of these two qualities, these two components of the approach, and they are inclusivity, ensuring that everyone feels as if there's an opportunity for them. They're not shut out by this or that. And then transparency, that all can see what's going on. And that is very important. Again, those two components are critical to the way ahead.
McChrystal himself keeps a murderous schedule. Up at 4:30 and out the door at 5 for his morning run through the maze of buildings and trailers that makes up his headquarters. This is his idea of leisure time.
How many miles do you cover, you think?
I do an hour.
Yeah.
And it's not as many miles as it used to be.
He eats one meal a day. Anything more makes him feel sluggish. In another life, he could have been a monk.
The lap of luxury.
It is. It's good. I mean, it's what else do you need? It's functional and it's comfortable. You get very used to it. You have what you have, and that's all you need. And you realize you don't need a lot of other stuff. One thing, of course, you miss is family, but besides that, it's pretty much perfect.
He lived like this for 5 years as head of a top-secret hunter-killer unit which captured Saddam Hussein and tracked down the infamous terrorist Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, calling in an airstrike to kill him. Being a general didn't stop him from going on commando raids.
This has been an important day for the president and also for two generals and perhaps for the Afghan war. Some have said this may be a turning point for the Obama presidency. Time will tell. Thank you for joining us this evening. Tomorrow night, Joan Rivers will be here and the man behind Pandora. See you then.